Hey, Larry, we're live.
Great.
And I'm making all kinds of noise.
All right. That's good.
What is it? What is that noise in the background? Is that you, Larry?
I don't think so.
Hey. You have your Facebook. You have your phone turned up. And I'm making all kinds of noise.
No, my phone is down.
That's good. What is it? What is that? Oh, do you know what? That may be me. Oh, yes. It was me.
See?
I'm better now. It was me for once. That's amazing.
You were about to hate me for that.
No, all kinds of other reasons. Never, ever that.
Maybe you were going to be intolerant of it.
Right. No, I definitely am intolerant of all things intolerant. Yeah. I'm pulling this up. Give me just a second here. I want to get the details of this event. But, Larry, so this is our first episode of Our Take. And
right.
Why are we doing this? I'll let you just kind of set the groundwork while I pull up the details of the event.
Because there seems to be increasing hate and intolerance in the world we live in today. So we just wanted to give our take on that situation.
Hey, Rick, Gary, how are you? Valerie, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yeah, let's just let's kind of dive into this a little bit. It seems like you're right. There is a lot of hate. There is a lot of intolerance, but it seems like everybody feels like their opinion is the only one that matters. And if you disagree with my opinion, then I'm going to do what I can to make you pay or cancel you out. And that's I think I want to just kind of start there.
Okay.
And, I welcome any feedback from the audience. This is an interesting subject, and it's something that really in the last, I'm going to just put it out there, in the last 5 years since Donald Trump, it's really become prevalent. There's people that think he's walking on water, and there's people that want him under the water with the fishes. And that was the first really taste for me of just how polarizing the political climate has become. And now it just seems to have gone way off the spectrum. So your thoughts, Larry?
Yes. So, I just kind of look at Donald Trump as the father of modern hate. Not that he is a hater. I'm not judging politically on that, but he seems to have evoked more responses, more opinions from people than any other modern president that I can think of, at least.
Yeah, I agree. So what is going on in your opinion? Why is everybody so over the top right now?
Well, again, I think it began with Trump. So I think, here's my take on it, our take on it. I think Donald Trump was a very in tune president with who he was. In other words, he was really confident and centered in his own beliefs. And anytime you have any individual that is tuned in, tapped, and turned on to who they are and what they want to achieve, it's going to evoke more responses from someone than an individual who is perhaps more filtered or is more socially cautious, so to speak. Like Trump he just spoke whatever was coming from within him. And so when you have someone who's in a leadership role that does that, it evokes that same type of emotion within the other person. So if he's going to speak this way to me, then let me speak that way to him. So it was a compounding effect, I believe.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. And I'm gonna, I don't want to call anybody out, but we just got done filming or recording one of our podcasts, and we talked about this segment that was coming up. And for me, it was really interesting because I'm recently single, as in, still going through a divorce, not quite there yet. And we got into the online dating world. And you had a lady that actually had very strong opinions about that, to the point where you want to share the story?
Yes, I was
call her out by name if you want, but you can.
Someone for a couple months, really nice lady. We were getting along really well. And then Jim was going through a divorce and moved into my home. And, Jim is unfiltered with his opinions. And pretty much she said to me that she couldn't believe that I would accept someone into my home who had those opinions, let alone be friends with him. And as a result, she said she could no longer see me.
Yeah, so we had just a comment, and I want to make sure we're going real time. Michelle found, thank you for watching, and that's what this is about. So I respect that you disagree with us, but can you share in the comment what you disagree with so we can address it and talk about it on here? Hopefully you're still there. You didn't disagree so much that you left. But someone said they completely disagree. So I want to stop and just say, good. Like, I'm glad that you disagree and you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, and let me explain what I meant, because perhaps Michelle thought that Donald Trump breeds hate. I did not mean that at all. I just meant that I think the hate and the intolerance that we're seeing in the world today is a result of the way that he portrayed himself. And I'm not at all putting any blame on Trump. Like, I wouldn't want him to change any style. So I don't mean at all to say that he is responsible for the hate and intolerance. If I did indicate that, I apologize, but that is not at all what I mean.
Right. So I'm hoping that she'll comment on that, because I'm gonna just say, and I'm sure most of you that know me know this, but I'm a big Donald Trump fan. I think he did a lot of things right. A lot of people were not a fan of the tweeting that he did, and I thought it was, regardless of what he said, the fact that he was comfortable saying it and taking it directly to the people was an opportunity for us to hear real time what was going on in his mind and and what was going on in the Oval Office at the time. So, but a lot of people really took exception to that, and I agree with you. I don't think Trump bred hate. You may, and that's why we're having this open, kind of candid discussion. But Michelle, I think we lost you. You didn't chime back on, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. If you can comment in below. But let's stay on the subject for just a second of Donald Trump. There were a lot of people that took things out of context that he said. And I'm not here to defend him, because he said some things that were not out of context, and a lot of people took offense to. And based on how they feel, they could or should, but either way, it's their prerogative. But with Trump, there were so many times that he would say something, and I watched it live, and then I would hear a news report of it, and it was totally misconstrued. And let me be just very real. The same thing is happening on the other side now. There's a lot of people that are taking what Biden says and they twist it. And I don't understand, number one, why people don't form their own opinion, watch the actual raw footage instead of getting snippets. But things just get twisted. But I believe he was more some people will agree with this. He was more twisted than any other president in history. It statistically 97 or 98% of his first 100-day coverage was negative, even from the inauguration. And the exact opposite has been happening with Joe Biden. Nearly 100% of his coverage is positive, unless you're on Fox or One American News or something like that. And then it's almost all negative. So why do you think it was why it was that way with Trump more than anybody ever?
Well, I don't watch most of the news channels, so I don't have a comment on that part. But I do believe that anytime you have someone that speaks their mind, in the speaking of their mind, it gives other people permission to speak their mind. So he raised the awareness and heightened the awareness and the feelings that everybody had within them, so to speak. So whatever you were feeling, there was like fuel added to the fire, because he was bringing that type of energy. And so I think that's like one of the things that I really admire about him, is that he had the courage to speak his mind. He really did. But through that, other people found their voices that hadn't been heard in previous years.
I get it. Yeah, there were a lot of things that really resonated with me. I just messaged Michelle to see if she would jump back on here and share why or how she disagrees with what we were saying. But yeah, he was genuinely authentic. You may like it or hate it, but either way, some of the numbers don't necessarily reflect what he did and who he was. But I brought up Donald Trump for a reason, and it wasn't to discuss him. So I'd like to move on and kind of move forward.
Yeah.
For me, a big thing that I've realized is that it isn't so much that people tend to hate Donald Trump, because there's a lot of times where you may not like a president or you may not like what they do. But what I found really interesting is how much people hate the Donald Trump supporters, and how the Donald Trump supporters are treated, or I guess categorized, and I'm one of them, so I can tell you that I've seen this firsthand. But you know, it's not the only alienated group. There's lots of alienated groups, but why are the people so at odds with each other? It used to be if I disagreed with you, we could talk about it over a cocktail or whatever, and then move on our ways, but we weren't enemies. There are families that broke up over one person supporting the president at the time and another person that doesn't. In my family, there was a lot of strife and conflict. But why do people feel so compelled to hate his supporters additionally?
Well, again, you know, I believe that if you simplify it, it comes to this. And I said it before here, and then I would really like to move past Donald Trump and just talk about my perspective, our perspective on hate and intolerance. But I think as a president, he spoke more freely than any other president that I can remember. He spoke from his heart. He spoke from his soul. He spoke from his spirit. You may have liked it. You might have disliked it. But I do believe that he spoke from within his essence and what he really felt. And when you do that, you consciously or subconsciously give other people permission to speak that same language. So as vocal as he was and as unfiltered as he was, others became the same. And it just escalated from there. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. But can I just share like my take on hate and intolerance?
Share your take.
Perfect. And this is what I'd like anyone who's listening to remember, that anytime you're intolerant or anytime that you feel hate, hate is hate. So if someone hates a certain group, and let me take Al-Qaeda. They came in, they had 9/11. They killed lots and lots of Americans. They were terrorists, all that thing. Easy to hate them. But if we hate them because they hated us, how is our hate any different to what their hate is? Because hate is hate. Now, someone may say, well, we may hate them, but we haven't gone over there and participated in some, mass killing of innocent people. But it doesn't matter, because just hate is hate. So if I hate a person for what they believe in or what they stand for, or if I am intolerant about a person for what they believe or they stand for, then in my intolerance, I'm no different than that other person that I'm claiming is intolerant of what I think people should be tolerant of. So I'm not saying that you have to love them and you have to agree with them, but that's the basis of unconditional love, is that I will love someone even in my dislike of them. So it's easy to love the lovable. It's easy to love someone who's doing really good or is doing good things for the community, who appears to be doing all the right things. But for the person who's doing the wrong things, and they may be sorely misguided, but for the person who's doing the wrong things and we judge them and we're intolerant of them or we hate them because of what they're doing, we're just becoming part of that problem. So for someone, let me just take a sensitive subject like race. For someone that hates white people, or someone that hates black people, or someone that hates Asian people, and for someone like me who believes that we should love all people equally, for me to hate that person because they hate black people, white people, or Asian people, or whatever race we're talking about, would be no different than them hating me. So
right.
I'm not going to hate them for that, because that's what they believe. And I believe it's misguided. I believe it's wrong. I believe everything. But nonetheless, I will love them from the source soul. And I know that sounds like, maybe a little woo-woo or whatever it is, but we have to get back to love. We have to get back to tolerance. And it's easy to love and easy to tolerate the people who are lovable and tolerable and everything else. But the real challenge is to love those who aren't. And that's what I'm saying. So I hope that makes sense.
It does. Let's dive into one of the topics that we agreed to talk about tonight. Let's talk about the veiled prophet and the Ellie Kemper situation. So I will tell you that I'm completely uneducated about what this is. I made it a point to not research and not look into it. You brought it up to me, and I've avoided the subject literally like the plague, because I just want to hear your take on it, your version, and see any comments on it.
Yeah,
and
so this is a St. Louis-based incident. The Veiled Prophet is a St. Louis organization, been around since the 1870s. Supposedly they were rooted and they began, and they did begin as a all white, all male group. And a lot of them said they were racist, and maybe they were racist. I'll never know. But the point of how Ellie Kemper came into this, and why I think this is so ridiculous, is this Veiled Prophet ball, Veiled Prophet parade, this event that goes on in St. Louis every year and has been since the 1870s. She was part of it several years ago when she was 19. And lots has come out about how the Veiled Prophet runs their events, and the fact that there wasn't a single African-American person involved till 1979, and et cetera, et cetera. So she came out and she publicly apologized for being part of this organization when she was 19. And she went on to say that in the future, if she's asked to be part of any other organizations, that she'll do her due diligence and research to make sure that the organization that she's choosing to be a part of aligns with her beliefs, and et cetera, which is all well and good. But come on, people. Like, she was 19 years old. This organization had been around in St. Louis for well over, 100 and some years before she became a part of it. To give her a freaking break. Like, don't be so intolerant of her.
Right, but here's the other thing. Let me talk about an even more sensitive component of this that I'm hearing again, and I'm hearing about this for the first time from you. But I don't really care that the Veiled Prophet organization didn't have an African American represented until 1979. African Americans weren't allowed to be in white schools until X date. That doesn't matter to me. It matters that when you identify there's a problem and you take steps to rectify it and fix it, shouldn't that be the end? I mean, history is history. It is what it is. It's static. It doesn't change. But so why would you go back and say you didn't do this until this date? You're a bad person. You're a bad organization. You're a POS, whatever you want to say. Why wouldn't you just celebrate the fact that they recognized there was a challenge and made the changes necessary to correct it? Speak on that if you would, because I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you can. You're saying that you don't care that they didn't have one. Well, a lot of people might take issue with that because a lot of African American people say, well, I did care because back in the 1960s or the 1970s, as my children were growing up and they aspired to be part of this elite society, they knew they couldn't because it was all white represented. So I do care, and I am angry about that, and that's fine. Like I totally get it. I would be angry about that too. What I'm saying is that at some point, we have to stop the intolerance and we have to stop the hate. And all I'm saying is that it's easy to do that when someone is looking nice and pretty, but really hard to do that when someone is looking ugly. But the real soul-centered spirit, the real person who's evolved, the person who really believes that there should be no hate and no intolerance in the world is going to have to love the hateable and have to love the intolerant. That's the only way you can get there. It's the only way you can get there. You have to get there through love. You can't get there through hate.
But it isn't even so. I mean, and I hear what you're saying, but for this subject, for me, that's your take. I get it. For this subject, for me though, like if you go back through history, all the way through history, you're going to find a reason to hate everyone. Yes. Everyone, everything, every family generation, it has a skeleton in the closet. People need to get over it. And I get that there's hurt feelings and there's generational this or generational that. But right now there's opportunity for everyone. And there's a way that you can look at things and you can say, oh, well, now because of this or because of that, there's this circumstance that impacted me. Well, go back 100 years. There was a circumstance that impacted somebody else. It's kind of like all these comedians that are coming out for the jokes that they made in the 80s and 70s and 60s. Like, it was right or wrong, it was acceptable at the time. It was acceptable the way it was at that time. So why can't we let go? Well, in fact, I don't want to say why can't we? I'm going to say people need to let go and move forward. If you don't like something in the world, you need to change it. You don't erase its existence. You make the changes necessary. So the Veiled Prophet, we're now 42 years, 43 years removed from the first time they did it. And I bet things are a lot more balanced now. And again, I'm ignorant to the situation.
Yeah, they're not, they are not all that balanced. So, but that's again, not the point, because it would be easier for many people to love them and accept them if they were balanced, but they're really not all that balanced right now. But again, that isn't the point. We just have to, at some point, become more tolerant of everybody and less hateful of everybody, even if they don't agree with us, because otherwise we become no different than them. There's no difference. The person that hates someone because they're doing bad things is no different than the person who does bad things that we hate, in my opinion.
I would love for anybody. There's a lot of St. Louis people on here. I saw Kendrick, Shannon, a lot of people that I know personally. I'd love to get your take on your take. Funny. I'd love to get a comment from you on what your thoughts are on the Ellie Kemper situation. Was she right to apologize? What's your whole take on the thing? So any comments, I would love to have those. But Larry, let's, for sake of putting it to bed and continuing with the flow of what we were going to talk about today, I want to talk a little bit about the erasing of history. And we kind of started to touch on it a little bit, but like the destruction of statues and monuments and things like that are like really, to me, if you forget where you were, you might fall back there. And the roles may reverse. And I think we're seeing some of that right now. There's a lot of people that are trying to erase pieces of our history. And if you look at famous dictators in the past that have erased pieces of history, that's how we ended up with Nazi Germany. And it seems to me that erasing history erases the reminder not to repeat it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in favor of censoring or erasing anything. I'm clearly sensitive to how certain things make people feel, but people that know me know my background's in the food business. And so I relate a lot to food. So my analogy or metaphor is you go to a buffet, you go to this bountiful buffet, and there's all sorts of foods on the table, but there's people that are gluten-free, there's people that don't eat pork, there's people that don't eat this, and everybody bands together and says, well, we should remove this, we should remove that. And by the time you're done taking everything off of the buffet that's offensive to someone, you're left with like an avocado or an olive. You're just, there's no variety on there. So I think it's far better to let it all out there and then let people sift and sort through what is out there, and just you put on your plate that which is pleasing to you and you leave the rest behind. So, you know, I mean, my father's side of the family came from Eastern Europe. There were probably relatives of mine that were imprisoned in the German camps. They said, you know, Jewish side, but I wouldn't want to erase any of the history of that, nor would I want to erase any of the soldiers or generals that participated in the deaths of the Jews, because I disagree with it. I think it's more powerful to let them be present and let people know that this individual stood for that. In my opinion, that individual stood for hate and killing. They had fear in them, you know, all sorts of things, but like, let people decide. There shouldn't be someone who is deciding for us of what is appropriate. And that's like, again, going to the buffet and saying we have to take this off, that off, because it could be offensive to someone. And then you're left with no flavor. And that's what I see happening today.
What I see happening today is, I want your buffet closed because you put an olive on there and I don't like olives. I think it's more extreme than what you're saying. It's not about taking them off. It's about, how dare you even have something that isn't pleasing to me on your buffet.
Right.
And they try and shut them down. I mean, just
go
ahead.
I mean, I believe in the goodness of people. I do. And I believe if people are presented with hate and intolerance and prejudice, that the majority of people will rise above that. And the majority of people don't buy into that type of consciousness. So we don't need to protect people from it. As a matter of fact, I think it's actually better to have it out there, because it's easier to guard against your enemy when you see them. It's really hard if you can't see them. So
right.
I just believe, like, I don't believe in censorship.
Well, and the old thing, like, I remember when 9/11 happened, and you brought that up a little bit earlier, and the Taliban and all the destructive things that they did. But it doesn't say, let's not remember, or let's not talk about it. The theme of that was never forget.
Right.
And like, to erase some of these things even erases the martyrs who gave up their life to make change. Like, how can you and let me just say it in this way. This is as far back as I'll go here, but how can you erase the Confederacy without erasing the celebration of the act of freeing the slaves and the abolition of slavery, and, you know, all the things that began to happen as a result of those people who gave up their lives to make sure that we could make those changes? Like, erasing history erases the people that fought so hard to change the future. You erase history, you eliminate those that changed history for the future. I think it's awful. The cancel culture stuff that you are hearing about, it's crazy. The businesses that are boycotted and shut down. There was, I can't remember who it was, Wayfair sold beds for the detainee houses on the border. And because they did that, there was a national boycott called of them. It makes absolutely no sense for me. So would you rather that kids sleep on the floor? I mean, I don't get the mentality behind shutting all of this down and shutting people down in general. It makes no sense to me, but we're running short on time. And what I'd like to do, Larry, is just if we have any comments, I'll address those. I don't think we have any that we haven't already addressed. But just if you want to take a final second and share what you have to share, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, just like to leave everybody with this thought that there isn't anything that anybody does except for the feeling or the thinking that in the doing of it, that they will feel better or that the world will be better. So the Al-Qaeda, the Taliban that bombed us on 9/11, however awful that was, and it was awful, they were committed to a mission that they thought was paramount to the essence of their beliefs. And I have to love them. I have to be able to find some point of love with that person. So I have to find the common denominator of love for the commitment and the passion that they were willing to do something for those beliefs, as much as I think the action that they did was awful, horrible, misguided, misaligned. Like, I mean, I could go on and on with that. But again, I have to find some way to let go of my own hate and my own intolerance, because it doesn't feel good to hate. It doesn't feel good to be intolerant. So I'm doing this as much for me because I just want to be a happier person. And if I look around and I begin to hate that person for what they did and hate that person for who they participated with and hate that person for that organization with it, I become a very bitter person. I don't feel good within my body. My chemistry doesn't flow as well. So I've got to find some way to find just a little love. And that's what I will leave you with.
Yeah, so my take is different than yours. I don't have to love them. And I don't, you do, and I think that's great. There's a lot of people that are on opposite sides of opinions of mine. I don't have to love them. But what I love is that they should have, and it should be protected, that they have a right to feel that way, to say what they feel, to embrace whatever they do. The Al-Qaeda, those individuals, I don't have to love them, and I don't love what they did. But you have to be able to let go. And in turn, you got to spin it and celebrate the heroes, the first responders that went in, that saved the people that could be saved. Like, there is something that can be celebrated and appreciated in every single act, because the bottom line is you can't change the act. You just have to find a way to celebrate it.
Perfect. I love that, Jim.
That's my take. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We will go through and watch these comments over. We'll look for new comments to be added. And, if you'd like to be a guest and kind of share your take on things that are going on in the world, we've got a lot to talk about. Our perspective may not always be agreed with, but as we talked about today, we celebrate your right and our right to share them. So thanks for being here for just a little while with us tonight. And our podcast, season 3, episode 2 drops tomorrow. So make sure you watch it. We're going to go ahead and close this out here. And I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks so much.
Yep. Love a little more.
Bye-bye.